All right, in the last video, I refined my sketch. I took it from my best thumbnail to a refined sketch filled in with black shapes, so I'm confident about where the black shapes should go. Now, I need to open that in a Vectr program, and we're using Vectr.com. It is in the assignment, so you can use the link. It's up near the top. And you can log in. You can sign in with Google. You can choose not to log in and just go to the site itself. But the one you want, they're always changing it like AI, is you want the SVG editor. We do not want AI tools. We're not doing a generative project, right? We want to be able to control these vectors so we understand how to get what we want. When we get to this screen, it's going to show us a lot of AI tools. Just ignore them. And you're going to go to New Artwork. And the reason you have AI tools is pretty much every browser-based freeware now has AI it's trying to get you to buy tokens for. But if you go to New Artwork, you can set your size. And the size we're going to use is 800 by 800 pixels. And then you're going to give it a name, right? So when you save it, it has a name you recognize. So always save it with your name and a description. And then create. Now this is a vector program. The pixels are what's called the artboard. We have an artboard of 800 by 800 pixels, but whatever we create on it is going to be a vector. But what isn't a vector is our refined sketch. So how do we get our refined sketch onto that artboard? We just drag and drop it on, and then we can size it. Doesn't really matter where we place it, just as long as we can see it clearly, so we know what shapes we're trying to create. So we got to this step. The problem is, if we make clean vector shapes like this, on black sketch, we're not going to be able to see where our vectors are. So what we need to do is click on it. Click on it. You see, it's going to remember in the history of my browser. So click on it, and then take its opacity down, if you did black and white, all the way down to 20%. And that's where I got in the end of the last video. So I just have two different vector files now. If I go to home, I can see both of them. And I can open either one. And if I want to log in, I can. But this is just remembering it because of my browser. Okay, now I need to see where my reference image is, which is pixel-based, and where my vectors are going to be. And that is in your layers. So if you click on layers, it will show you, right now, we just have this one layer, which is just one layer of pixels. There we go. You are going to lock that by clicking on this padlock. By clicking on the layers in the sidebar here. All right, these are our tools for creating a vector. We have shapes. You know shapes. We've used them before. For those of you that have stars in your designs, this star vector shape is going to be very helpful to you, right? You can build with these basic shapes. You can build with some of these more compound shapes, just like we did our emojis in exercise 2. But shapes is not probably the best way to do this project. It's there for you. It creates vector shapes. The one underneath it is the classic way to build a vector. So it's what I'm going to teach you first. It's what's called the pen tool. So the pen tool, whether you're in Adobe Illustrator or in Vectr.com, this is how we can make shapes. So I'm just going to start with one of these wings. You click, and it's actually designed to use with a mouse or a trackpad, but you can use it with a tablet. But all vector programs are about precise clicking, like clicking in a precise place. So I'm going to click at the point of this wing, and then I'm just going to let go. And where I point next, that plotted one anchor point. I'm going to plot my next anchor point there. Then I'm going to plot my next anchor point there. I'm going to plot my next anchor point there, and then there, and then there, and then there, and then there. And notice, because I'm never holding it down, I'm never dragging, that's what's called polygonal design. It will always be a straight path between the anchor points. Nope, we're using the pin tool. So I'll do it again with this wing. I'm going to click, move, click, move, click, move, click, move, click, move, click, move. The trick to it is to use as few anchor points as possible. And then here's the important part. You have to close the path. So how do you close the path? You have to click exactly where you started. Again, about precise clicking. Now when I look at my layers on the side, I'll see that I have my path that's locked, which is my sketch. And then I have two different vector paths, because every time you close a path, it will save it as its own path. Now what's cool about these vectors is that they have properties. That's what makes them vectors instead of just pixels. Those properties are a fill, and I'm going to fill them with a color. What color do I want? I want black, solid black. Right? And they have a stroke. Stroke is what Illustrator calls it. In Vector, they call it a border. So notice this has a 1 pixel stroke. I can increase that, make it thicker. I can decrease it, make it smaller. I'm actually going to keep it pretty thick, but turn it off. I'll just keep it at 1 pixel, the default, but turn it off. Uncheck it. This one, so where did it go? It's empty, but that path is still there. I just need to fill it. So now I'm going to fill it, and I'm going to fill it with black. So that would be my black shapes if I wanted my shapes to be all straight edges. So now I need to show you how to make curves. Because remember, vector programs allow you to plot anchor points and then to do either curves or straights between the anchor points. All right, so now, if I take one of these paths, I'll turn my sketch back on, and I want to turn it into curves. How do I do that? I go to the pen tool again. I click on it. Whoops. Sorry, I don't go to the pen tool. I click on it first, just from the regular home screen. Double click on it so I can see the anchor points. And then when I can see these anchor points, I can move them. So if I didn't plot them exactly where I wanted them, this allows me to adjust them. One way to turn straights into a curve is what's to use the rounding tool. This little dial here. Right? But the proper way to do it, that's just for rounding corners, which can be helpful sometimes if I wanted to round that slightly and round this slightly. And you can round from the outside as well, like that. But the proper way to do it is to double click on the anchor point. And that gives you what are called Bezier handles. These Bezier handles set a curve for you. Now, if you just double click the anchor, you get the Bezier handles, and then you can drag them and move them. But you see how they're always going to move symmetrical to each other. So if you want them to move not symmetrical to each other, you hold down Command, and then you can move them independently. So you can adjust the curve on each side differently. If I want to turn this to a curve, double click, hold down Command, and I can control the curve on both sides. Like I said, it's kind of annoying, right? But it gives you full control, and you can always go back to it. So what I'm going to do is just slightly curve and round these, and then see if I like this shape. Because this shape is a vector, infinitely scalable. always clean. This has to be a lot more precise than my sketch underneath, right? Because my sketch underneath, come on, there it is. You see how blurry it is when I zoom into those pixels. So I'm defining exactly the shape I want to make that wing. Now, if I like that, I don't need to redo that over here. I can simply turn this path off, and I can Command C, Command V to duplicate this path. And then I can use reflect here to flip it, and the transform box here to rotate it, because that's how I designed it. Right? So it's really simple in concept. It's difficult in execution to get your shapes to work with as few vector anchors as possible. So that is the pen tool. The pen tool is the tool you're going to use. In Illustrator, the pencil tool is my favorite tool, but in this program, the pencil tool is trash. Okay? So I'll show you why. If I use the pencil, the idea behind it is great. It just means you can free form your shapes. So you just click and draw. And I do that. But if you want an amateurish looking logo, you'll see what this does. I'm just going to go pretty fast and close it up. What it does is it's called a freehand path. And when I click on it, you'll see how many anchor points it gives you. Way too many. So it's really, really hard to then smooth and use. So my gift to you, my gift to you is to make you learn the pen tool within Vectr.com. Now the pencil tool in Illustrator, if you want to use Illustrator, you can set it to be more smooth and accurate, and it will plot the fewest possible anchor points for what you drew, and it will smooth out your drawing. But that is not a feature within this freeware. So what do we have to do instead? We have to learn how to use that pen tool. Now I'm going to show you another way. If you want to delete, you can just select it. How do you delete? Actually, it's a good question. You can always just turn them off and lock them, so you don't need to worry about it. So the locks really help as well. So lock anything that you're sure about. So I know I don't want to use that freehand path. Okay, now I'm going to use the pen tool again, and I'm going to create this more difficult shape, right? And now this is the professional way to do it. Instead of just plotting straights, here I'll just do it with the eye to show you. And Command Z works really well. Control Z on a PC. I'll just do the eye. So instead of drawing this eye with the pen tool with straights, come on. Get me there. It will save your progress as you go. I'm going to use the pen tool. I'm going to zoom in on the eye, Command plus. Instead of plotting it with straights this way, because it's a curved eye, right? And then closing it. And then changing each of those, double-clicking it and changing each of these to curves, which would be really annoying. Right? Wouldn't it be nice instead, come on, there we go, to be able to just plot curves and straights wherever you need them. So if you know how to do it, you can do that with the pen tool. So I'm going to start with a point, let's say here. And then I'm going to reach for the next point, but then instead of just clicking, I'm going to click and drag. And that will turn that into a curve. Now, why didn't I do that from the beginning? It's because when you make a curve like that, it's going to want you to finish with a curve. And in this instance, this is the exact reason it does that, because it's nice to echo that curve with the same curve. So it's trying to help you. But if I didn't want to, what I can do is click back to this original and hold down